Association of Southeast Asian Nations. What a great joy to be gathered. This first ever summit in the heart of Europe between the leaders of the member states marks an important anniversary. In 2020, the EU and the ASEAN elevated their ties to a strategic partnership with a commitment to work jointly on enhancing prosperity, promoting security, strengthening resilience, and improving sustainable connectivity. This summit offers a political forum and is, of course, also a great opportunity to demonstrate and reconfirm this shared commitment. Now, without further ado, I kindly invite you to rise to listen to the anthems. First, we will hear the one of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and immediately after will follow the anthem of the European Union. So please stand up. May I ask you now to welcome the President of the European Council, who will officially open the ceremony, Mr. Charles Michel.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Your Majesty, Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, heads of state and government, excellencies, dear friends. For me, it is a particular pleasure to offer you a warm welcome to Brussels for this summit of the European Union and ASEAN.
Pleasure to welcome you to the first ever EU-ASEAN Commemorative Summit, and is also the first ever EU-ASEAN Summit here in Brussels, here in the European Council, the home and meeting point for our 27 EU member states. I am very pleased to see so many familiar faces from the recent East Asia Summit in Cambodia. I want to particularly recognize my co-chair, Prime Minister Hun Sen, Chair of ASEAN, and President Marcos as ASEAN Coordinator for relations with the European Union. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to celebrate 45 years as partners and to set our shared priorities for the coming years. This month also marks the 2-year anniversary of ASEAN and the EU becoming strategic partners. And looking back, we have clearly shown that this was the right decision. The EU and ASEAN are the world's 2 most advanced regional integration organizations. We understand each other very well, we share the same values and the same spirit of cooperation, and we both know the challenges of transforming the vision of a political community anchored in common interests and rules into concrete reality for our citizens. Today's meeting is also an opportunity to bind our regions closer together. And one way to do that is through trade. Trade is a powerful tool for promoting growth and closer ties between our regions. Our trade agreements with Vietnam and Singapore have already boosted our common trade and will continue to help drive our recovery. And we are exploring trade agreements with other countries in your region. We also hope to develop an EU-ASEAN free trade agreement. And another concrete example of our cooperation is our partnership and cooperation agreements with Thailand and Malaysia that we will sign later today. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, our two regions have faced major challenges in recent years. The COVID pandemic has hit our societies and economies hard and caused enormous suffering. But this pandemic has also brought out the best in humanity. We were able to develop and produce vaccines in record time. And the EU, together with our EU member states, we have mobilized over 800 million euros to support ASEAN and its member states to fight the pandemic. And through COVAX, we provided more than 3 billion euros to help secure almost 2 billion doses of vaccines for low and lower middle-income countries in the ASEAN region included. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, we are living through turbulent geopolitical times. Climate change, COVID-19, conflicts and security challenges. And on top of this, Russia's war against Ukraine and its consequences for the world, the energy crisis and the food security crisis. The European Union has stood by the people of Ukraine since day one, because this war blatantly violates the United Nations Charter. The attempt to change internationally recognized borders by force is not acceptable, and we stand for the values and principles enshrined in the United Nations Charter. These are not just words, these are the compass for all countries who believe in peace and the respect for human rights and for fundamental freedoms, and that includes respect for the territorial integrity of sovereign nations. Dear friends, the EU and ASEAN, we have so much in common, and that's why we are pleased to work together to deepen our cooperation. And we can do this in 5 key areas. First, to achieve greater prosperity. By working more closely together through multilateralism, we can build a more peaceful, fair and prosperous world. It is in both our shared interests. Second, we can work more closely together to protect our planet. This is a global existential challenge that needs everyone on board, and we owe it to the future of our children. Third, the digital transition is a challenge for all our societies, and we can work together to develop peaceful, secure, open and inclusive digital economies. The fourth area where we can deepen our cooperation is on infrastructure and connectivity, by strengthening our links in the fields of science, technology and innovation, including initiatives that bring our students and young people closer together. And finally, we can deepen our cooperation in security and defense across many areas, like transnational crime, maritime security, women in conflict, and peacekeeping operations. In particular, we can work together to improve cybersecurity and fight cybercrime. I strongly believe we can deepen our relationship in all these fields for the benefit of our people. And this deeper cooperation goes hand in hand with the EU strategy for greater cooperation with the Indo-Pacific region. We want to contribute to the region's stability, security, prosperity, and sustainable development. Thank you for being here. You can count on the European Union. Thank you.
Mr. Charles Michel. Cambodia, ladies and gentlemen, currently chairs the ASEAN and actually just hosted in November the ASEAN summit in Phnom Penh. As they will soon hand over their presidency to the next chair, Indonesia, this summit is an opportunity to hear their reflections and their experiences. Please welcome His Excellency Prime Minister of Cambodia, Mr. Hun Sen. Please join me at this lectern.
Excellency Charles Michel, President of the European Council, Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, Excellency Peter Fiala, Prime Minister of the Czech Republic, and President of the Council of the European Union, Your Majesty the Sultan, Excellencies, Madam Lady, leaders of the EU member states, and the ASEAN colleagues. As the ASEAN Chair for 2022 and as co-chair for the ASEAN European Union Commemorative Summit, let me begin by extending my heartfelt appreciation to the leadership of the EU for initiating this historical commemorative summit, as well as for the warm hospitality accorded to us. Indeed, this commemorative summit is a major milestone of our 4.5 decades-long relationship. As per our tradition, this is an opportune moment for us to look deep into our past cooperation, as well as to exchange our views and wisdom to chart the course of our future's relation. Needless to say, the rapidly evolving regional and global architectures and all the traditional and non-traditional challenges are all areas of importance that merit our consideration for this summit agenda. Your Majesty the Sultan, Excellencies, Madam, ladies and gentlemen, our joint vision, conscience, and desire for peace and prosperity of our two regions have guided us to successfully establish a strategic partnership, which is reinforced by a clear plan of action to 2023-2027, covering a wide-ranging areas of cooperation under the three pillars of ASEAN. At the same time, I wish to recognize the good progress of the implementation of the previous Plan of Action 2018-2022. Certainly, this commemorative summit is being held at a time when multilateralism is under severe strain. For more worrisome for this part, global peace is also threatened by state action that blatantly violate universally recognized international law, norms, and principles. Going forward, I believe that ASEAN and the EU have to work hand in hand to ensure that the rule-based international order will be inclusive, open, transparent, and mutually beneficial. As two rule-based and responsible regional blocs, ASEAN and the EU should spare no effort to safeguard and promote the United Nations charters and universally recognized law, norms, and principles, which serve as the foundation for building peace and stability and improving the life and livelihood of our people and beyond. On a personal note, and here I take the case of the protracted conflict and the ensuing strategies of my own country, Cambodia. I never believed that we can achieve peace through the act of war or the mere of threat of war. That is why I sincerely hope that peaceful settlement of conflict through dialogue and consultation should be our common approach. Your Majesty, the Sultan, Excellencies, Madam, ladies and gentlemen, I am confident that our deliberation today will allow us to transform our collective spirit into a practical vision that would benefit our region and the whole world for many decades to come. I look forward to a frank, open, and constructive discussion. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Hun Sen. Now, after these opening words, I would like to ask your attention for the President of the European Commission. She will share her thoughts and experiences on the strategic partnership of the EU and the ASEAN based on the shared values and principles of both organizations. Her Excellency, Mrs. Ursula von der Leyen, who I will also ask to join at this lectern. Your Majesty, Royal Highness, fellow leaders, let me add my warm welcome to Brussels after such a long trip. One thing is for sure, there might be many, many miles that divide us, but there are much more values that unite us. For 45 years now, indeed, ties between the European Union and ASEAN have grown stronger and stronger. And today our strategic partnership is more relevant than ever. Because if we literally stand at the opposite sides of the world, our destinies are linked more than ever before. We have seen it with the pandemic. We see it in the connections of our value chains. We see it with climate change and with geopolitics. Russia's war against Ukraine has sent shockwaves through the world. Not only is it an attack against the rules-based order, which protects every country's right at all corners of the world, Russia's war of aggression has also destabilized the global economy and made global commodity prices soar. I know that ASEAN has just signed with Ukraine the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation, and this speaks louder than a million words. Fellow leaders, both the European Union and ASEAN have multilateralism in our DNA. We have strong economic ties. We have a similar outlook on the Indo-Pacific. And this summit gives the opportunity to discuss how we can join forces even more to achieve our shared goals. And I see three key areas where we can do more. The first is on energy and climate. Russia has unleashed a global energy crisis which comes on top of the ongoing climate crisis. The answer to both crises is the same. We must support each other to speed up our transition away from fossil fuels and towards renewable energy. Renewable energy is not only good for the climate, but it is also homegrown
it gives us independence and security of supply. At G20 in Bali, we signed a just energy transition partnership with Indonesia. And together with partners, we have just concluded a similar partnership with Vietnam. I know that Prime Minister Hun Sen has called for an ASEAN Green Deal. So let us discuss how the European Green Deal and the ASEAN Green Deal can reinforce each other. My second point, we should also reinforce our economic ties and trade. We are each other's third largest trading partner, but it accounts only for 5% of our trade. So there's so much of untapped potential. And the lesson of the pandemic should be that we should all diversify our partnerships. And we all know that today, trade agreements are much more than tariffs and quotas. They are vehicles of cooperation to jointly address the twin green and digital transitions. They are also about digital trade, about clean technologies, about resilient supply chains. I very much welcome that our trade ministers focus on that now. Our trade agreements with Singapore and Vietnam are already delivering on the ground. And Europe wants to conclude more free trade agreements with other ASEAN countries. Our ultimate goal is one of a region-to-region agreement, and I think we need to seize now the opportunity and make it work. My third and final point. Meeting the challenges of the twin green and digital transition requires massive investments in infrastructure and people. And we all need to diversify our sources of investment. Many investments will be private, and some will require public support to make them happen. And this is where Global Gateway comes into play. And today, Team Europe is putting forward an investment package for ASEAN worth 10 billion euros until 2027. If we want to link our zones of growth, we need to upgrade our economies, upgrade clean energy, the digital infrastructure, from wind farms to solar power plants. We will support the integration of electricity infrastructure and electricity markets in ASEAN, and we will invest in trusted and secure digital submarine connections. We will cooperate on research and on academic exchange programs. And we will strengthen together the response systems for pandemic preparedness in ASEAN. So there's a lot of good work ahead of us for both Europe and Southeast Asia. Once again, a very warm welcome to Brussels.
Thank you, Mrs. von der Leyen. Now, before we give the floor to the other distinguished leaders, we invite you to listen to some music, to listen to the cellist Marcel Johannes Kits. He is from Estonia. He began his training in Tallinn, and then he continued his studies in Germany. After reaching the semi-finals of the International Queen Elizabeth competition this year, in 2022, he qualified for the finals and ended up third. Today, he will interpret for you excerpt from the second movement of the 9th Symphony of Antonin Dvorak, followed by two movements of the 6th cello suite from Johann Sebastian Bach, Sarabande and the final Gigue. Now, these cello suites were called amongst the most profound of all
classical music works, so I trust you will profoundly enjoy them. They are considered some of Bach's greatest musical achievements. Please put your hand together for Marcel Johannes Kitz. Thank you, Master Johannes Keats. The Philippines, Your Majesty, Your Royal Highnesses, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Philippines as a country currently assume the ASEAN-EU coordinator role. I now have the pleasure to welcome His Excellency, President of the Republic of the Philippines, Mr. Ferdinand Marcos Jr.
Your Majesty, Your Excellencies, President Michel, EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. After 45 years of enduring partnership, there is still much that can be achieved between the two organizations that we head. Given the breadth of potential cooperation between our regions and countries, I would like to enumerate 3 priorities. 1, I look forward to closer maritime cooperation between our blocs based on the intersection of priority areas between the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific and the EU strategy for cooperation in the Indo-Pacific, underpinned by ASEAN centrality. Beyond declaring respect and support for UNCLOS as a legal framework that governs all activities in the oceans and seas, we need to see an effective application of the UNCLOS to address the maritime disputes and geopolitical rivalry in the Indo-Pacific to truly realize the still distant aspiration for the Indo-Pacific to become a sea of peace and prosperity for us all. 2, I look forward to closer economic cooperation, both on our bilateral and bloc-to-bloc relations. At this time of economic recovery from the ravages caused by the pandemic and the current threats on the supply chain, I hope to see the proposed Philippine-EU Free Trade Agreement move beyond scoping negotiations soon. With the entry into force of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership amongst Asia-Pacific countries, the European Union misses out on the benefit of having a similar agreement with ASEAN. We encourage the EU to calibrate the scope and coverage of its proposed FTA to what is currently possible for ASEAN to collectively agree on, so we can make concrete progress on the negotiations on the ASEAN-EU FTA. Likewise, I look forward to closer cooperation and to the continued implementation of the PH-EU Partnership Cooperation Agreement for the benefit of our peoples. And third, the world must get together to fight the effects of climate change and to ensure sustainable development. Climate change threatens to radically transform for the worse many vulnerable ASEAN landscapes. It is a race against time to conserve and prevent habitat and biodiversity loss. The ASEAN Center for Biodiversity, which is based in the Philippines and manages the preservation of all 51 ASEAN heritage parks dotted all over the region, which represents ASEAN's diverse ecosystems, needs as much support as it can get. I encourage the EU and its member states to continue extending cooperation activities and support for the ACB. We are currently losing huge chunks of our natural resources at a rate difficult to repair and impossible to replenish in our lifetime. The ACB's work is vital in preserving and growing ASEAN's rich national heritage, which serves as a main pillar of our culture and our economy. As coordinator of the ASEAN-EU Dialogue and Green Tech and Innovation Mapping until 2024, the Philippines will vigorously pursue collaboration and coordination with the EU to meet the dialogue's aim of facilitating green technology transfer and cooperation between our regions. At the bilateral level, I express my appreciation for the launch earlier this year of the EU-funded National Copernicus Capacity Support Action Program for the Philippines, which will help us develop and apply space technologies to increase our resilience to natural disasters and climate change. There is no problem like climate change that is so global in nature that it requires immediate and united effort. We need to act now, we need to act together, we need to get it right. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Marcos. The Council of the European Union has a rotating presidency. The current holder of this presidency of the Council is the Czech Republic. So please, your attention for His Excellency Prime Minister, Mr. Petr Fiala.
Dear Prime Minister Hun Sen, dear President Marcos, dear President Widodo, dear Ursula, dear Charles, Your Majesties, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am very glad that we can meet here today. I would like to thank our colleagues from ASEAN for making the journey to Brussels for this important meeting. Despite the geographical distance between us, the Czech Republic has identified Indo-Pacific as one of the priorities of its presidency in the Council of the European Union. The main goal of our presidency was to tackle the impact of Russian war in Ukraine on Europe and its citizens. The Russian aggression in Ukraine has a global impact. It cannot be understood as a distant conflict by anyone. It violates the international law, in particular the UN Charter. And the task of the United Nations and its members is to uphold these commitments and principles. In Europe, the war in Ukraine helped us realize the importance of partnership with like-minded countries around the world. I would very much like to see a deepening of our cooperation based on shared interests as well as values. The member states of both ASEAN and the European Union depend on the multilateral international order. We both want peaceful relations with our neighbors and partners, and we all want to deepen our trade links which benefit our citizens. Both ASEAN and the European Union have witnessed violent tensions in our immediate neighborhood. The tensions between Russia and Ukraine have resulted in an open war of aggression. We can hope that other crisis areas around the world do not lead to this result. Therefore, I see a great potential for cooperation between our two regions, especially in two areas, economy and security. We have well-established relations in trade and investment. The free trade agreements with Vietnam and Singapore are very good examples. I hope we will soon be able to deepen trade cooperation also with other ASEAN member states. Today's signing of partnership and cooperation agreement with Malaysia and Thailand is a promising step forward. The Czech presidency worked over the last semester to boost our exchange also on the other fields like environmental protection, cybersecurity or disaster risk management. On security, our priority has been to strengthen the resilience of the Indo-Pacific in various dimensions: human security, energy security or security of supply chains. The COVID-19 and the following global shortages were an eye-opener. Given the global nature of these challenges, I am convinced that we are bound to work together. Over the years, Member States of both ASEAN and the European Union have become dependent on unreliable suppliers in many key resources. We have to work together to reduce these dependencies. Today, we will see and identify a lot of opportunities for mutual cooperation. I hope we can use these chances to bring these possible projects to reality. Thank you, everyone, for coming to Brussels, and I wish all of us a successful meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fiala. Now, during the closing ceremony of the ASEAN Summit in Phnom Penh, Mr. Hun Sen passed on to the President of Indonesia a gavel or a hammer, if you want. This was a symbolic gesture, of course, in view of Indonesia taking over officially the presidency in 2023. So I now invite His Excellency, the President of Indonesia, to speak to you, Mr. Joko Widodo.
Yang Mulia,
Excellencies, leaders of the European Union and ASEAN, this year we mark the 45th anniversary of partnership between ASEAN and the EU. We have gone through many challenges together. Our partnership has also attained many good outcomes. However, I have to say that our partnership is not all smooth sailing. Many differences that we must address. Thus, if we want to build a better partnership, partnership must be based on equality. There must be no imposition of views. There must not be one who dictates over the other and thinks that my standard is better than yours. Distinguished leaders, for decades, Southeast Asia has become the economic powerhouse. All projections point to Southeast Asia as the epicentrum of growth. Therefore, partnership with ASEAN is a beneficial one. In September this year, the EU-ASEAN Business Council issued the survey's result on business perception in ASEAN. 63% respondents see ASEAN as the region with the best economic opportunity. 69% respondents expect ASEAN markets to become more important in terms of worldwide revenues over the next 2 years. And 97% respondents want the EU to accelerate FTA negotiations with ASEAN and its members. Let us build an equal and mutually beneficial partnership. From the pandemic and multidimensional crisis we are facing, we'll learn important lessons. That to grow and to prosper together is the only option. We must not only advance together, but also must progress equally. Let us shape a better future together. Thank you.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we don't want to close this opening ceremony without showing you the contribution of the EU and ASEAN Youth Forum. They are very keen on sharing their recommendations on some hot topics such as security, technology, fake news, fair trade, climate, integration, and so on. It is, if you want to see it that way, an invitation to take action. How do they see the creation of a better world? Now let's hear what they have to say to you.
President of the European Council, Charles Michel, ASEAN Chair Prime Minister Hun Sen, Your Excellencies and distinguished guests. We, the Young Indo-Pacific Forum, the Youth Sounding Board, and the EU-ASEAN Young Leaders Forum are here representing youth from both regions. On behalf of our peers, we would like to share with you recommendations which we strongly call for you to take action on following this historic summit.
In the area of security, governments and society face a multitude of threats. Therefore, we recommend immediately establishing a common framework to combat hybrid threats.
We believe digital and technological cooperation is essential to boost economic development and democratic integration. We recommend the integration of ASEAN states into the European single market for data to share standards and increase transparency.
We have concluded that fake news is the biggest threat to democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. Therefore, we recommend you to force large social media corporations to combat disinformation on their platforms effectively.
Regarding trade, we need to move past a purely business perspective and include values and common ideas to tackle future challenges. Therefore, we recommend more continuous dialogue through a value-sounding board to ensure fair trade for all.
We must limit global warming to 1.5 degrees, and we have to act now. We recommend the immediate disinvestment of environmental harmful subsidies. Subsidies on fossil fuels need to be shifted towards a just green transition to avoid a climate catastrophe.
The space to create these recommendations was made possible with the amazing support of the Asia-Europe Foundation and Konrad Adenauer Stiftung as partners of the Young Indo-Pacific Forum, and DG INPA as initiators of the Youth Sounding Board and the EU-ASEAN Young Leaders Forum.
We call upon you to make space for youth in decision-making, to take action based on our input. Let's move past tokenism and youth washing towards meaningful youth engagement in all areas. We strongly support Commissioner Opalainen's idea to include a youth representative in each delegation at EU-ASEAN summits.
We will endure consequences of inaction, so decisions about our collective future must be made together with us involved. Through all the challenges we have and continue to face, we have been showing up already as leaders, committed to making the world a better place.
Let's work together!
Yes, indeed. Let's work together. Clear language and good recommendations. Now, we have come to the end of the official opening ceremony. I wish you an inspiring and a successful summit. Please, I would like, before I can see already you wanting to stand up, I would like to ask the delegations to stay seated for the moment. It will not take a long time. And I would ask the leaders to stand up and to come forward, because we would like to take a family picture here in front. It will not take long, and after we can, I can give you other instructions where to go. invite you to take your seats as the opening ceremony is about to begin.
Tidak euforia yang berlebihan.
Kita semuanya harus percepat proses vaksinasi ini dan tetap taat terhadap protokol kesehatan.
Terutama memakai masker.